right?
Yeah, sure, sure. So
But
glad to hear that. So, and Anhalt still closed now, or you are planning as well to open in this week or next weeks?
well, it is some hybrid situation. For me, it's not allowed to teach my students. They only allow teaching when it's about practical things that are absolutely necessary. So for the botanists, for example, when they have to examine some plants in groups of 5 people. But for us in MLA to speak, to have lectures, I'm not allowed actually. And I do all my studio feedbacks via online. And of course, this is a possibility, but it has its limitations as well. How do you teach your students right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still we are teaching online. Even up to now, we are not sure yet when it will be end. And uh, some of us, most of us believe that until October, this condition still happen like this, unfortunately.
That's
But
unfortunate, right?
yeah, yeah, we are praying. We hope that it will be better because you know that before even we have 1,000 in daily new case, but no, I think better. We have around 40, 400, 500, 600, better
Okay,
than
so it's
before at
going
least.
down on your side. All
It's
right.
going down. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, there was a time where I have been reading in the newspaper that in Indonesia it was increasing very quickly. But it's good to hear so that you have it under control now as well.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and I
Hopefully it's
really
getting
hope that
better.
yes, and I really hope that we can teach personally again in October. We're not sure yet. And I hope it won't get or won't be the new normal, as everybody is, well, many people are really fascinated about these online
Yeah.
possibilities. I don't have to travel, that's fine, but I have more work than before. It all takes a long time, and I think we cannot really teach everything like that. Many things are getting lost, and when you discuss some drawings on the screen, you only see one drawing, and normally on the table we have 5, 6, 7 drawings, and we can make connections and discuss and being creative. And like that, only seeing one drawing, it's a little bit dull. It's very limited, in my opinion, for creativity.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum. Selamat sore. Hello for everyone. Let me announce that we will start at 3 to 5. So please give us 5 minutes break due to the Asar prayer. Pak Ilya will take Asar prayer first, and 3 past 3 3 past 5 we will start. So please bear with us for next 5 minutes, and we will start the event right away. Thank you very much, and once again welcome and thank you for joining today's event.
yang demikian. Maka yang jadi panglima di zaman sekarang ini, yang jadi panglima adalah seharusnya
Assalamualaikum, Pak Ilya, sudah siap?
Iya, Waalaikumsalam.
Bu Prof Uhrig?
Yes,
Okay, can we start?
I'm fine. Yes, we can start.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Partisipan, selamat sore, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Selamat datang bagi seluruh peserta. Terima kasih telah bergabung dan izinkan saya membawakan acara hari ini dalam bahasa Inggris. I'm really happy and grateful to be with you on today's event, the online forum of talk and discussion series from Architecture Department, Islamic University of Indonesia. Before we go on, I'd like to congratulate all Muslim fellows who attend today. I'd like to say Happy Idul Fitri, Taqabbalallah minna wa minkum, siyawana wa siyaminkum. Let's open today's event by reciting Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we have a very special guest from Hochschule Anhalt, Prof. Nicole Uhrig, and from UII, Associate Professor Ilya Fadjar Maharika, in the topic of a social urban space in time of crisis. How are you, Prof. Uhrig?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you for your introduction, Barito.
Great.
And
thank you very much.
thank you very much for. Yeah, sorry.
Your video is still off. Probably if you can turn it on.
Oh yes, it was running 5 minutes ago, but now there is.
Okay. And
but let's see. Let me try to fix it.
Okay, no problem. And I will also say hello to Pak Ilya. Assalamualaikum, Pak Ilya.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the introduction and inviting me for as a discussion of this meeting. That's very nice.
Thank you very much for both of you, your time, and thank you very much also for all attendance. I can see a lot of people. Some my friend, I think I saw one my MLA friend and all colleagues. I am very happy that everyone can join for today. Furthermore, let me introduce both of our speaker and discussant today. The speaker today is Professor Nicole Uhrig. She is a professor in landscape architecture master program, and she graduated from landscape architecture in TU Berlin, ITSAB Barcelona, TUM München. She has a lot of experience, like in teaching in Hanover, München, and as well as some research and practical as well in the corporate landscape. Now she has a specialization in landscape architecture, theory, landscape design, and construction. She's my former professor when I'm studied there. So thank you very much to join us. And for the discussion today is Associate Professor Ilya Fadjar Maharika. He is a senior lecturer in Islamic University of Indonesia in architecture department. He teach in bachelor and master of architecture as well. He graduated in architecture and urbanism in Universitas Kassel. So this is both has a German ability, speaking ability, but for me I have less actually. And he also has experience as a full-time lecturer in Islamic University of Indonesia. He was a vice rector, and in term of research, he managed the Center for Social Design, BIM Center of Excellence in UEE, supported by Ministry of Public Works, and became a professional architect as well. He has specialization in social design, urban planning and design, and BIM. So once again, thank you very much for spare your precious time to be with us today. So I like to share a little bit about today's event, that we will have first a talk from Professor Uhrig in 30 minutes, around 30 minutes, and then there will be a question and discussion led by Pak Ilya, and we will have open question from audience, and then we will have a closing. So for open question, in order to have a convenient event, please kindly write down your question on chat, and then we will select your question. So don't forget to mention your name and affiliation. And of course, we will try to respond all the questions, but due to the time limit, we will apologize that maybe not all answer can be, not all question will be answered. So as we know, the urgency of COVID pandemic, it's very contagious. And we know that a lot of policy regarding the physical distance and crowded limitation between peoples. So it's happened everywhere. On the other hand, as an irony, the successful public space are intentionally designed to trigger the crowds and warm interaction between people. Furthermore, Indonesia with other countries is facing a phase where the new normal start to introduce by government to bring the economy back to life. This will lead to the consequences of more activities, including in public space and in tourism public spot as well. So the question that arises is how public space need to be designed or redesigned to answer the necessity of people gathering socially while keeping the contagious on minimum level. So to begin with our session, I like to give time to Prof. Uhrig to share some insight regarding this issue. Okay, please, Professor Uhrig, the time is yours.
Thank you, Professor Baritoadi. And you're very right what you're saying. And I want to thank you for this invitation and for the chance to discuss with you first, and as well with Professor Ilya Maharika, the topic, and of course to discuss with the audience. So first of all, I would like to send a very warm welcome and greetings from my home office. We have to work in home office right now and have to do online teaching on our universities. And this is daily routine. And I guess all of you have been getting familiar with this. My hope is that this won't be the new normal, so that we can back to normal teaching as soon as possible. Well, I will talk about this crisis and the current situation from a perspective of a landscape architect. And that's what I would like to take you with me. Let's have a walk through some slides, and later looking forward to discuss all this with you. I will start to share my screen now. Host disabled my screen sharing. Oh,
okay,
Barito, could you please?
Okay, let me put you back.
Let's have another try.
Okay. Okay, so let me. I asked help for my Mas Oji because the host is in your hand now. And
oh,
while
great.
you're waiting, maybe some introduction can be add. Let me. Okay.
No, I'm not allowed to share my screen still. If not, you can share your screen, Barito, and I will tell you each next slide. Let's go like this.
Okay.
No problem.
So let me share your materials. Okay, now it's already seen.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
All right, maybe we can skip to the next, please. This was my introductory slide. All right, look at this picture. This is a German city on the 22nd of March. This is a pedestrian zone that's normally very crowded. So what's wrong with this picture? Right, people are missing. So it looks a little bit like a ghost town, in my opinion, and I think we all experience that. So what has happened since the last 10 weeks? For the public life in our cities, in my opinion, it felt like running down a hill very fast and suddenly got stopped by a tree trunk. So it was quite sudden and a hurtful stop. So public life was not existing in our cities anymore. And next slide, please. This is what also happened. Less people means more wildlife. Coyotes in city parks and a chance for nature to come back to the cities. We have many nice photos of that. Next slide, please. And as Jan Gehl put it very right to the point, he says, I really believe that man is a social animal and needs to meet other people. And he's very right. So he's a very famous architect for his research on sociology in architecture and urban planning. And maybe you know his books Life Between the Buildings, or maybe you know his movie Human Scale. And I think he must be very concerned about what's happening right now. So think about your own behavior. How did your everyday behavior change in the last weeks? Just have a minute and think about it. So when was the last time that you had a really relaxed walk in the park, or meeting friends with a picnic in a park, or ran into another person, apologizing for it and harvesting a brunch or a smile, for example? Or when did you last time muddle through a crowded street? Or by chance talk to someone on the streets that you didn't know before? And I think thinking about all these things missing now could lead us to the question, what makes a city attractive, actually? And many things might come into your mind now. And social open spaces are really part of it. And this is what we will talk about this today a little bit more in detail. So what else is missing when we try to consider this from some kind of emotional and sociological point of view? So apart from our closest family contacts, many things are missing. There's missing social interaction. There's missing experiencing community or being part of a society, or the feeling to go out in public space and to see other people or being seen, getting attention or getting esteem or even critique. So that means this is social action and reaction that we normally are used to, or being inspired by other people, or being confronted with different kind of social values. And this is training and practicing our tolerance actually in everyday life. And this is what is missing actually. And so on. I could repeat and mention many other things, and I guess more things are coming to your mind as well. And all this normally takes place in public space, in urban spaces that we planners are creating, and in the end, we are responsible for. So for us, it's really hurtful to see what's happening right now. So all around the globe, we're dealing with varieties of restrictions. You in your country had your restrictions, we had our restrictions. They vary a little bit, but in the end, it's all about social distancing, and it's how people adapt this and how they live this. Since a few days, we started with the relaxations of the restrictions, and have been opening again, and more people can meet. But we're really having a very close look at the numbers of increasing infections. And we already had 2 spots where after people met, a new chain of infection was starting. So what we do now is tracing this, because we don't want to close our restaurants again. So we took so many measures with distancing the tables. And of course, it's a question of economics as well, as many firms start to go bankrupt now. So if we don't obey these restrictions and if we can't control the numbers of infections, the economic effects will be very harsh in the end. And although restrictions are getting eased and we have relaxations now, the thing of social distancing measures, this will accompany us much longer, I guess. Next slide, please. In the next slides, I would like to juxtapose what we learned as planners, how to organize social urban space, and how is the effect with the social distancing measures right now. Next slide, please. Have a look at this. So what we learned as planners, this is about promoting social space. What we learned is to design encounters in open space, to invite people to meet and stay, to encourage communication, and to respect the human scale. And this is what actually makes cities livable, and providing lastly some kind of living quality. And especially in countries, it varies in the country. So we have countries, they have a bigger social distance culturally, and we have others, they're hugging more and they're even closer. And we could see this in the numbers as well of infections. So as I got to know different kinds of European cultures, after a while it was getting clear that Italy and Spain was so much affected by this crisis and by infections, and so much more than Scandinavian countries, for example, because their social habits are so different. A hug is much more convenient in Southern Europe than in Northern Europe, or people, how they live together, what kind of family structures do they have? Do elderly people live very close with the younger people? Do they live together with 10 people in a flat or with 1 or 2? So this is a real big deal that affects directly on the numbers of infections. Next slide, please. All right, after we learned about how to promote social space, this is how we actually live. This looks very sad. If you sit down on a bench, this is allowed. You need to have social distance, or you find even prohibition signs that says, well, this bench cannot be used. Very sad thing. Next slide, please. Or things like that. As we are organized in different federal states, in Germany, we have one frame law that was about social distancing, but the range was wide how the federal states have been interpreting this. So some states even didn't allow anyone to go to parks, and others allowed this, but it was forbidden, for example, to sit down. And this is the situation that you see here. And we had some guards patrolling as well, telling people, please stand up, you're not allowed to sit here. Or we had young people lingering around in the park, still having picnic. Well, they were so careless, and they didn't feel affected by all this. And of course they met, and they had their picnics there. And the police was there, and they tried it with friendly with friendly words, and mostly it worked out, and to explain them that this is not possible anymore in this situation. Next slide. What else did we learn? The importance that we need to provide play areas for children, and that this is necessary for their physical development, for their cognitive development, social development, and emotional development. And we are suffering from a decline of play. This is what researchers found out. And we have a lot of failures in childhoods, that children really lack socialization, and they really lack from a very physical condition if they don't go out and try themselves out and use their bodies, how to balance. And the grades in school sports is lowering more and more because this experience is actually missing. Or we have this problem of helicopter parents that take care too much for their children and are always afraid of something might happen. Well, and that's why we have to promote playgrounds for children. And what happened now? Next slide, please. That's the actual situation. Children are standing on the fence and want to enter, and they want to move. They have this energy that needs to to get out, and actually they don't understand what's happening. Especially small children are really suffering from that, and how to explain your child that it can't use the swing right now. It's right in front of its nose, but it's not usable. And as well, children were suffering from this social distance measures as well. So they were not allowed to meet their friends, for example. And this had a real emotional impact on them as well. Next slide, please. As well, we learned this, that connecting spaces and connecting people, this is the good thing in planning. And the bad thing is to keep it disconnected. We have so many city squares and different choreographies of space where people move through the city, have a choreography, are guided through. This is a quality actually, and it helps orientation. And now we are creating more and more barriers. Next slide, please. This is a disconnected space. And here I refer not to the Corona crisis, as we have other crises too. We had a terrorist attack 2016 in the western center of Berlin. And now some temporary barriers have been installed as it was a car attack. Actually, these barriers were thought to be temporary. They're still there, unfortunately. And they really disconnect the surrounding urban areas, not only physically, but also atmospherically. And you can't see the coherence of the city structures anymore. Apart from that, it's a quite ugly structure, in my opinion. Thank you. Let's talk about the measures. So what did we try to install and do in our urban space to promote social distancing, or to live it actually? And there are various kinds of measures that have been taken in all over the world, in many countries, and they were installed very quickly and very often in absence of planners and done by DIY, by do-it-yourself. Next slide, please. Separating sidewalks. This is a very simple measure that has been taken so that people don't meet too much or don't get too close. But as you see, the ladies, how they behave, actually, either they did not want to respect or they didn't understand. You know, people have their customs in moving through their environment. And well, now everybody has to be very careful and to be alert all the day, because you know, if you have your patterns, it's very easy. You can think on other things. And now you move through the city and suddenly you need to think, oh, may I cross here? May I approach this person or not? So even to me, it happens that in the first weeks, I was very aware of washing my hands, keeping away from people's behavior. They have been doing this since 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's not an easy thing. Well, this is the most simple thing that we can do, put some signs. But there are other ways to communicate this. Next slide, please. When it's about queuing or waiting in public space, I've seen many varieties, and this is a collection of train stations, and you see a queue in front of McDonald's. People are getting creative and trying to find out how can we communicate this to people, and to make it not too rude. Yeah, they put it to a nicely designed so that people will be aware of it. It must be eye-catching somehow to remember people. Hey, there's something going on, and there's something to remember. Next slide, please. All restaurants. When the first restaurants were allowed to open up again, well, they separated the tables, of course. This is a very simple way to achieve social distancing. But this nice idea was seen in the Netherlands. So they had their little greenhouses for two people to dine or to have lunch. In some other restaurants, just put some glass between people, or some wooden walls. This looked a little bit more strange, and then you feel even more separated. Next slide, please. Well, what also happened that in crowded city centers, like in Barcelona here, in areas where a lot of people meet, you just need more space. If you want to open the city again, and you don't want people come too close, you need more space for pedestrians. And this is how they tried to find a very quick and simple way to give a sign to people. All right, this now is for you pedestrians. And but you see, it's less space for cars actually. And when the crisis started and we had the total lockdown, the city was empty with cars. For those who had to drive, it was amazing. It took only half of the time to get through the city. But now with all these measures, the car is really has to step back. Next slide, please. And the same happened with bicycle tracks. As so many people changed to bicycle instead of public transport, as this is more safe and more hygienic and virus-free. And in Berlin, they have been promoting this a lot, and they installed, I think up to now, 25 kilometers temporary cycle paths. They're called pop-up cycle paths here. And they have been installed very quickly, and cyclists are so happy that finally they can get through the streets that were always crowded and not really safe due to too many cars. And the nice thing is, we have been fighting for cycling tracks a lot, and we have a new mobility law in Berlin that really promotes having more cycling paths in the city. But of course, car drivers are fighting against this, and now those people, they use the crisis as piggyback, to promote having more cycle tracks. This was a very interesting thing to see, and it's so much cheaper to have a temporary bicycle path. It's 9,500 euro per kilometer. If you compare this with a permanent track, it's up to 500,000 euro. That's much more. So the hurdles are much lower to install something like that. Next slide, please. But of course, the car is still beloved by many people because they feel much more safe in it. We have even people with masks inside their cars, and they don't want to use public transport anymore. If you want to reduce carbon dioxide production, and if you want to have a livable city, this is what we planners fight for as well, to have less cars in the city. But right now with this crisis, this just happened like that. But for those people who are really risk, they're on a risk because they're elderly people. For them, it's much easier to use the car, of course. And as we are a country, we're having a very cold winter. So what will happen? So now everybody's happy to ride the bikes. And as soon as the winter starts, the bicycle lane, they are getting slippery. It's very cold on the bike. And well, so many people change, of course, again, and want to drive their cars. And I think this will get a real clash of traffic sections, because now we have more pedestrian zones, we have more bicycle lanes, but in winter, many people will use their cars again. So of course we will suffer from many and more traffic jams. And I don't think that the temporary bicycle lanes will be deinstalled so quickly. Next slide, please. Another topic discussed a lot these days is the smart city solutions. This crisis triggered the push of digitization, very clear. I guess we all felt it as students and our university as well. In our university, or in my personal case, since 3 years, I had the plan, all right, let's more into online learning as well. We can provide material on Moodle platforms and everything could go much more smoothly, but there was not enough pressure and we never had enough time to dedicate ourselves to these new tools. right now we had to, and we learned very quickly, actually. I got to learn so many softwares in the last weeks. That's amazing. And they're really good possibilities as well. Well, they're limited, of course, in some certain grades, but they open as well some kind of potential. And what cities really need to or can take advantage from for this crisis or for the next crisis is that with the digitization and with a good infrastructure, you can facilitate much more flexible, and you can be very agile and be more resilient to crisis situations. So you can install online platforms instead of meetings, and so on. So everything will go a little bit more smoothly, and maybe the cut won't be so harsh. And very specific solutions are being discussed now. So infrastructure expansion is always a thing, so that on the countryside in Germany, sometimes you have a real weak internet connection. And as we're a developed country, this is really embarrassing. We have really wide areas on our maps where there is no internet at all. And we created new online platforms for concerts, for nearly everything. So people are having a lot of ideas. And what we are discussing, or what is globally discussed, is the famous Corona app that tries to prevent infections or to trace infection chains. And all these digital working models are focused. But that doesn't mean that we will have a smart city with a lot of control. So I think this model is not fully accepted today. Maybe in the future it will look differently, but we had a lot of small smart city initiatives that just failed because people felt too much controlled, and this is not what we want. So it was the sidewalk in Toronto, or Planned IT Valley, or Neom, or Songdo in Korea. So there are some samples where you see, okay, this is still a critical path, and we have to negotiate about this. How far do we want to go with the idea of the smart city? And interchanging personal data, for example, because this is necessary for a Corona app. You need to trace people's movements around the city to find people they had contact with. Next slide, please. Another very interesting aspect, as here in Germany, we're having many laws and many restrictions. I think we're famous for that. But in the last years, we had discussions were starting and arising where people realized that this is not always a good thing, because some things just take too long. You cannot react quickly or right away. And this is what we needed in this situation of Corona crisis. And I'm very happy to see that some administrations were really aware of that and were very willing to go for more flexibility and to move inside this frame of possibilities without doing illegal things, but to lower the bureaucracy a little bit. So for example, the bureaucratic hurdles and restrictions were lowered for restaurants using the public space, for example. This is always a big thing we have to apply for, and this will be checked. And now, so that restaurants can open again, and the safest place is outside, actually. And they consume more public area. And of course, this must work out. We are having pedestrians too, we have cyclists, but in the last weeks, it was much easier to get a permission to put more tables outside, or to have more distance, and thus to consume more space. Next slide, please. Another idea of smart controlling is this pilot project of the talking robot dog in Singapore. I don't know if you heard about that. A real funny thing. That's a robot that moves like a dog, running around the parks and watching people. If they're getting too close, a female voice is arising telling you, for your own and others' safety, please keep at least 1 meter distance. I have seen a video about that, and I have seen people running away. They were really afraid. They have never seen something like that. So let's see if this project will be successful. So like that, they don't need people to walk the patrol. But next slide, please. Referring to this slide I showed you before, the terrorist attack in Berlin, you have seen these temporary barriers, these ugly ones, And that really give people fear, because whenever they want to enter that square, they see these barriers, and it's like a memorial telling them, hey, here happened something terrible. But even memorials can look a little bit more, they can look, well, better designed, or having a bit more respect from what happened. But of course, we have manufacturers of furniture for urban space, and they call this safety furniture. In London, they use it already a lot. And well, this is a new product line, and it's car attack proof. And actually, you don't see the actual function. And I think this is a way we could deal with it. It's a way to introduce things, not with a big hammer, but in a more subtle way that it works, and that don't give fear to people using it, or remembering them every day. Wow, some kind of terrorist attack could happen. Nobody wants to be reminded on that every day, I guess.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. All right, coming to my conclusion, what does this mean for the future? So what are the thoughts, how we can deal with it? Next slide, please. So for now, we try to fight the fear that people can move the space outside freely and enjoy the playgrounds again, that they reconquer open space again. Therefore, they need to be well informed and in an adequate way, so that they can react responsibly as well and don't infect other people again. So how can we get people to be responsible? So actually, how can we change people's behavior to act like that? And there's the way of giving a sign, forbidden, prohibition, but there are better ways to give suggestion and to trigger actively preferred behavior. And this could be done with some action animating signs, or with nudging in urban design. Nudging is a technical term that comes from economy. And that means Richard Thaler was telling that, and it alters people's behavior in a predictable way, but without forbidding things. So that means it's a positive way to inspire people to do something like that. It's like in urban design, if you have two pathways where people could decide to go, and one pathway shows two trees, like a gate or some kind of entrance. This is an action animating sign, and this tells me, hey, go here, this is a gate, this is an entrance, you are welcome. Or the more comfortable your bench looks like, the higher is the probability that people will really sit down and enjoy it. And I think this is some kind of technique or strategy in design that we should use more, actually. Nobody wants to have red signs and forbidding barriers in the city all over. And of course, what we have seen now is that we have to improve our resilience, to be more flexible in city planning and with easy, quick, and economic measures, so that we can react very quickly. But I see some, let's say, I'm a little bit afraid that a lot of these quickly installed restrictions and temporary installations, that we might get stuck in it. For the municipality, it's quite simple. They didn't pay so much for it, and they say, well, actually it works, why not keeping it like that? But I think we should not sacrifice the higher goals of our plan, of us planners, what we learned. We really need to stand for that, and to fight for doing it right as we learned it, and not being satisfied with all these temporary measures. We can do better. Next slide, please. If we see this from an even higher level, from an overview, so here you see the parks after the first restrictions were loosened and the first relaxations came. So the parks were really crowded, and you see this on the dustbin here. And there was a big need for people to really go out in the green to meet and enjoy it. And this shows that this is a very good argument to say, yes, it is really relevant to take care for that. And in this crisis, we realize that nothing shall be taken for granted. It can disappear very soon, and our structures are in danger sometimes, and there's a lot of uncertainty going on. Next slide, please. So that means we always need to ask ourselves as planners or as citizens as well and trigger the discussion. So what is really important for us in the city and how do we want to live finally? And how much social urban space planning do we really want to sacrifice or afford? And afford is a good keyword, I think, because I'm very sure that this health crisis will develop to some economical crisis, as it's really obvious, and it will come to economic shortages. And the next thing that will happen is that all our clients and municipalities, they will say, oh, sorry, but open space design, we cannot afford. It's not of basic relevance. But let's prove and show, yes, it is relevant. We have seen this, how people behaved after this crisis and what we experienced, what we really missed and what felt lost. Next slide, please. That's it. This was my thoughts and my part of the discussion. So now I'm really happy to hear your opinions about it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you
very much, Prof. Sorry to the technical difficulties. I have to change into the voice command. So whenever you say move and the slide goes. Okay, so
no problem. It was fine.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting talks from you. And let's move on to Pak Ilya. I think, yeah, now I think you are the co-host and you can share. Please try, and if there's a problem and...
Sorry, that's very interesting. Can I call you Ulrich? Nicole?
Yes, of course, please.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Prof. Ulrich gives a lot of empirical evidence, of course, in the setting of European cities, or particularly in Germany. My point of view, or I have a small numbers of slides that give some kind of notes of mine, and I will share to you and also to everyone participating this webinar. Let me start with sharing. Sorry. So yeah, my point is that sorry, yes, my point. This is the expression, the people reaction after COVID spread, and many people in Indonesia try to redefine the authority of space. And it is the one of the maybe like a very strong expression of the local lockdown, and how they try to maintain the virus is outside there, and the inside is somehow virus free, although maybe this is not always the case. But and I try to understand this from a larger theoretical point of view, and coincidentally, it is many are in line with Nicole presentation, and I think my note will end more on the questions rather than the solution. So, but I think that if we have some kind of right question, maybe we have also will some kind of right solution in the future. Maybe not so long future, but also maybe in this immediate response post-COVID-19 open space. So I'm sorry. Not okay. When I had trouble with the sharing because it's not work as I expected. Can you see the
Yes.
following slides? No, not yet.
I can see the lockdown slide.
Yeah. That's not the actual. I will stop the because I need maybe from the internal computer. Sorry for the
No problem.
mess.
Oh, that's part of that's everyday life right now.
Because it's not always okay. This is not the last version, but
Okay, are you can you share the screen yet, or maybe I can help you to share your.
right. Have you seen the? No. I've shared actually my presentation in your.
Yeah.
Can you see the?
Or can I help you to?
Now we can see the first slide.
I mean, I will move to the second
Oh,
slide.
yes.
Okay.
Now it works. Introduction.
Yeah.
So this is I share Pak Ilya's material. Will we do this way, or you can start to share your screen?
So I'm very I'm starting with this very nice quotation from Michael Carmona. Place is shape, not only to generate place value, and place value is generated to enable youth to sustain healthy, socially rich, economically productive lifestyle, and with minimal environmental impact. So that's for me, it's very perfect theoretical framework. But of course, this the actual is it from you? Sorry, Pak Barito.
This is from me.
Please next. So I'm a little bit fast. So this is actual picture that we see, and of course in the United States it's much more really say I would say extreme expression of between the lockdown from the state point of view and the freedom and liberty from the people point of view. So there is a clash of perspective rather than only clash of daily life activity. So the perspective is relatively or really different. So next, please. So for me, this is really a crisis because there is an authority in one hand and the people freedom in the other. So although we have possible scenarios that first COVID-19 will go away when we are not sure. And if vaccine for the COVID is invented, is that everything is come back to the normal? Do we think so? Come back to the normal, or some kind of new normality that we think about? And or maybe this is the worst case, but we do hope that this is not happen. Will continuously appear, gone, maybe relapse again and again and again. So. I think we as a planner and architect is in the really decisive point of time. Just like maybe some 100 years ago when the Industrial Revolution disrupt all the quality of space and then change the way we design, and we know now urban designs, for instance. So this is maybe some kind of new new way of thinking should be think of. Next, please. Yeah. So I'm come back to very basic. I think from philosophy that people actually has some kind of autonomy and to some extent try to create neighborhood with like a social being. It always needs somebody else. And exactly in this point, we have some kind of problem in this construction of being autonomy and the neighborhood. Please, next, please. Yeah. So interaction in social spaces based on the anthropogenetic motives like the touching, speaking, did, see, and creating family or group or maybe community, even a nation. So it's always places to somehow complete this anthropogenetic motif into action. So now and then the situation of COVID is challenge this, all of these motifs. Next, please. Yeah, and this society make places. So so this is what we call as place making, and how we as a designer, for instance, take in charge in this place making. So and in I think it's very nice that Nicole have already give us a very interesting examples of how the post-COVID or the crisis generating alternative, generating creativity on how the society to create places. Next, please. Then, but now we have this one. So with the corona, with the COVID-19, the motive is somehow one only, preserving life. And this is the conditio humana, the condition that being shaped in order to create the preservation of life. Next. And it challenge everything. Either containing the virus, or next, please. Yeah, isolating chamber, that we are isolating ourselves from somehow virus in the air. Some kind of something. The extreme. Next. So, in this case, the society try to segregate this spaces into small piece can be somehow authoritatively controlled. Next, please. Or with the spread of the virus, etc., and then suddenly we have some kind of ubiquitous virus and unforeseeable situation. So that's creating crisis in our society. Next, please. So this is the questions raised on the notes. Normally, we think as an urban designer or maybe landscape designer or any anyone who it's our goals, like but not so distant future. What is the reality? It's a permanent, like maybe Nicole has already give the example of how the terrorist measurement, anti-terrorist measurement, become new mechanism in order to enhance to separate people and to make some kind of barrier to responding to the COVID. So this is a new mechanism arise. Maybe about density. We, Nicole have already talked much about how space can be used as to create lower density, making social and physical distance using some kind of apparatus of control. But is that, do we need some kind of new management if internal density, or maybe the dynamic density, like Richard Sennett has already give the insight, or maybe street and traffic now is limited, or maybe no, there is no, but maybe in the not so distant future, maybe in the winter, Nicole has already give his example, come back to the private car. Oh no, please don't. But how to make an adaptable public? So this is more question than answer. Public space for strangers now is empty. Jacob think that urban should be a place for the strangers to meet each other, and now it's empty. And then do we need some kind of physically buried space, like Nicole has already give the examples, or maybe clustered, flock based or the closeness of the person, or maybe in the future wearable health ID, or maybe sanction technology with the solution of smart city, which is of course will harm maybe privacy, and also to some extent for the hijacking of the IP theft, etc., etc. So it is not. It is still the question. Yes. Okay. Planner, and then maybe now is using mask faces, but maybe in the coming year, or maybe coming month, will come the new fashion in order to cope with this situation. Crowd, new management of crowd meeting. We have Zoom meeting, and maybe in the future, not so distant future, we immerse technology meeting, etc. So the last but not least, actually the urban infrastructure element, which is now we act with a cautiousness and also carefulness, but maybe in the future will be developed more on non-touch operation, or maybe automation, etc., etc. Like so, a lot of questions actually. So and open up also a lot of potential for the solution. Next, please. So such as something like this. This is 2018 actually, for the hive of the Apollo or something. But it can be maybe happen not so distant future. Next, please. And this is the people that try to make an experiment using biosensing technology. And my previous research with Mark Pullen from United States also try to impose or experimenting with the biosensing technology for the urban design. And yes, it works to some extent, but and many also problems we faced due to the this is technology, and the technology is very depend on the system behind. So there is still a problem, but of course there is also potential. Next, please. Biosensing to create some kind of distance or giving some kind of alarm, but of course there will be a problem with the privacy, etc. Next, please. So this is the examples of how the sensing technology is being developed in the lab, in the industry, etc. And then maybe to some extent they are ready also to be implemented in urban spaces. Next, please. In internal space, maybe the smart building is already have some kind of elaborate sensing technology, although the biosensing is not yet really being implemented, but maybe in the not so distant future will be available. Next, please. So maybe in the future there is a rapid report of these technological responses for the external spaces of using IoT, web-based surveillance, etc. But again, Nicole has already warned us that there is a problem. There is a problem. It is not everything smart is smart, actually. Yes. Okay, next, please. Next, please. Yes, this is one of the examples of how the technology tracking data set. This is actually the tweet between the and then try using urban visualization, and that this is the tourists that flock here, but maybe in the future will be available also. I think the idea of the smart city coping with the COVID and the application is to track this kind of map to create. Next. So I think the last slide, mine. Next, please, Pak Barito. Yeah, the last one. Yeah. Is that any last one? No?
This is the last one.
Oh, okay. So this is before the last one, yeah. Before.
Go.
Yeah. Yeah, this is many more spatial responses. Yeah, spatial responses being exercised. I think we can find it in Arch Daily, for instance. I took this from Arch Daily. Next, please. Next, please. Sorry for the slow response, with slow network here. Yes, this is the epilogue. I mean, just to make some kind of repercussion of Nicole has already illustrated that there are more questions, and we are thinking we should think in more solution. And this is not only using the theoretical framework that Carmona has already laid out, but we have to, through spatial creativity, and also maybe to some extent technological adaptability, from fashion to urban design and maybe to urban spatialization in general. So for me as an architect now, trying to reconnect between the spatiality, creativity, and the technological adaptation. It's much in the realm of the ideas right now. Thank you, and I think we open question and also discussion from the participant. This is my notes on the post of COVID spaces. Thank you, Pak Barito.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Ilya and Prof. Uhrig. Okay, so I think we already hear two talks, lectures, and it's a bit difficult for me to make a conclusion because it's not yet to be concluded. There's a lot of questions, challenge, but also hope that we know that now we can rely on some technology in the near future. And I think that what will be interesting, what will we see on next um, distant future. So now I would like to um, read some questions. Okay, so first I will read a question from Pak Wiryono from Islamic University of Indonesia. So I think I just read this, and Pak Wing mentioned that my colleague from Vietnam mentioned today that the situation in Vietnam is normal, quote unquote, almost like the situation prior to the pandemic. So the government has officially opened the schools and universities, and they operate as it was before. So no special arrangement in distancing people, but they has not yet allowed international mobility. So the question is, do you think Germany and other European countries will have such confidence? So because some countries like Vietnam, where they can control inside the country, they can uh, contain the safety inside. So they open it without any restriction. But yeah, maybe in slide that Pa Ilya showed that there is some containing for the healthy people. So will it Germany go that way? So that's the first question. The second question from Pak Heru Purbo. So first question is, I think there's a two question from him. First, do you think this new normal will persist after the pandemic? If not, what measures should we do as a permanent new facility, and which one as a temporary measure? Because there is a lot of illustration about measures that being taken, DIY, government. So maybe there is some insight to share. Which one do you think will be the new normal measures that we need to take it as a permanent measurement, and which one still as a temporary? The second one is it our duty to perform place making in the virtual world? So is it our duty to perform place making in the virtual world? So maybe that's a lot of irony. There's a virtual world, how we can contribute to that. Okay, so that's maybe I will read one more question, if you will. Last one for this session from Mr. Fris Nuzir from Bandar Lampung, also alumni of Anhalt. This is, and not to disrespect all victims of Corona, I rather agree with Prof. Uhrig view to see this pandemic as trigger of change to our urban rather than to see this as threat only to our lives. And when we discuss about a trigger, then we must prepare ourselves to be ready with the big bang or or change. So like a big change. So I think that question for us as architect, designer, and planners is how we can prepare the common people for this change. Okay, and not that this change most possibly will permanent, since we have seen many examples from Prof. Uhrig's slides, of which many temporary solution become permanent. So like opinion or statement, but maybe this is it has little relate to the previous question from Pak Heru Purbo, like as you told us about the terrorism, for example, that the temporary solution becoming permanent. So maybe you have more things to comment on that. Okay, so I think that's the question for now. So I will give opportunity to Prof. Uhrig and Pak Ilya. Maybe Prof. Uhrig can give a response to the question.
All right. Thank you very much, Barito. Very interesting questions. And I have been reading the chat besides a little bit. That's a high level discussion, of course. And it's a proof that with this topic, there are more questions than answers. And I think Professor Ilya said this too. The first question that was referring to Vietnam, so that there were no straight restrictions, but that they stopped international trafficking. If this could serve as a case model or for Germany, for example. I think we should not talk about case models. As what was mentioned in the chat as well, we should not forget that we are talking about different cultures, different societies, different behavior patterns. I think every country needs to have a look at it from its own perspective. What does work with our people? And some things we can learn from, I don't know, from Scandinavia, and some things we learn as a wrong example. We shouldn't do it like that from USA, but everybody, let's say, has to combine its own dish. Because every country is different, every government is different, all the rules have to be combined in a different way. And government needs to find out actually what works with which culture. And if people in Vietnam are very, if they respond very well to restrictions, and if they're very responsive and responsible, and keep social distance, maybe it will work out for them, but maybe not for other countries. So later I would like to discuss as well, how is your experience in Indonesia, for example, about the behavior of people. And another thing, what happened here with communication on behalf of the government was, for example, that when people did not respond to all these restrictions, and they were still going to the park, still having parties. After reading these news, 2 days later, there was a report of a 16-year-old girl dying in France. And everybody was afraid suddenly. All the parents told to their youngsters, hey, please don't do that. This is dangerous for you. And they were actually taking advantage of fear of people. And even the Austrian government, they did admit that they really discussed this, that they really have been working with some typical news to make people afraid to obey. If this is good or bad or morally correct, you can decide on your own. But I think to work with moral case models, this is difficult in my opinion. And as well, it's the same for which measures to take, or what will be the new normal. We can't know. I think Professor Ilya was proving very well with a theoretical background that we need to discuss about scenarios, but we don't know what's going to happen. If there's a vaccination, fine, but nevertheless, next year the virus could mutate and change, and we have to start from the beginning. So actually, we don't know. That means we need to deal with this high dynamic, and I think we have to be aware of this pandemic crisis, because as we are suffering from biodiversity going down, and this will trigger even more pandemics. And I don't want to be well, it's a difficult thing to say. I don't want to be too harsh, but it's only a coronavirus. We have many worse viruses in the world, so it could have happened much worse. We have Ebola or whatever. So let's consider all these developments in a very dynamic way. I think we have to react very flexible and very specific to the culture and to the country and to the measure that will fit. Yes, and how Professor Ilya said as well, spatial creativity. This is what counts actually, to be quick, flexible, and staying creative. And the last question that I took note is how to prepare people for the change. This is a good question. Honestly, I don't know. In my opinion, from my cultural background, I would say inform people and be open, don't fool them, and don't work too much with scenarios that make people afraid. If they are well informed and if they are well educated, I think this is a good way to make people really follow new guidelines and follow new rules, because everybody is afraid of losing their lives. But I think as we're there is no fixed answer. We can say yes or no, or we do it like this or do it like that. of course, we are professors and we're an academic society as well, and you try to find answers. But I think here we need to be very sensitive and really, rather than talking about the one answer, is discussing a wide range of possible solutions and possible answers, and combine the right bouquet for each situation in each country.
Thank you. Ilya?
Yeah. I'm responding to the last question, whether how to somehow
Kalinda.
Somehow trigger that corona triggering the change and how we should react and maybe to some extent develop the responses on urban design, on landscape design, and our body of knowledge. Just like, as I mentioned before, just like when our founding fathers of urban design responding to the somehow similar situation with Spain or of the urban aviation creating by industrialization. So just say about a density that I've already gave the sketches, that we should rethink about density. If we say with this very simple answer that, oh, density creating problem with the corona, deal with the corona, because the solution is just simply please develop our urban design low density. It is not true. It is not that way. We should know better the behavior of the interaction between the virus and human. And in this case, from the evidence that we learn, for instance, the density inside the containment, like a house, it too problem with the virus. But density in the outside, the external density, is not that really, if we can maintain the behavior of the human, keep the separation and using the mask, etc. So the answer is not simply, oh, let's create the low density of urban design. So we have to think of how teach people using our using space, using places, using elements, etc. So Prof. Ulrich has already given a way, like nudging. This is also maybe we can discuss more about the possibility. And of course, this is very, in my opinion, this is very localized. It is not really global in terms of that solution in Germany maybe work well in also in Indonesia. No, maybe I do really agree with Professor Uhrig way of thinking, that it is very much related to the local and the society itself. And about the placemaking in the virtual world, I think, yeah, this is one of the options actually for the maybe using game technology, etc., in order to create somehow this kind of meeting, the Zoom meeting much more fun. The problem with the change from the actual conversation to virtual conversation like this is that the virtual conversation needs more energy than the simply talking with our friends in real world. Why? Because we need more concentration. We need more energy to see visually the expression of our counterparts. So that's why meeting something like this, it's much more energy we need, and then it is not really long last comparing to chatting in the cafe, for instance. So yes, if using like immersed technology, the virtual reality, etc., etc., maybe to some extent we try the burden of creating of this problem with virtual meeting will be less and less. So I think maybe in the future. So I think this is also opportunity for the architect or the landscape designer, urban designer to work with the IT guys in order to create some kind of hybrid environment so that we can blend between the virtuality and the space and place. So that's my opinion. So I think we can discuss more. And about Pak Heru, I think Prof. Uhrig has already given the answer that there is no, from my opinion, there is no exact recipe that this one should be temporary and then this one should be permanent. And maybe to some extent, one of the challenge for us as a designer is to invite people to creatively design a solution, and then using maybe some kind of gatherings idea, and then to challenge the idea, and then maybe the good solution in one places can be adapted into other places, and to many extent can be become a permanent solution. I think something like that.
Thank you, Pak Ilya and Prof. Uhrig. So there's another question. I think we still have some time left, so I will read like one or two more questions. So the one, it's I'm sorry because I copied that. I've left the, oh, it's from Kirana from UII. So there's a question. Due to facing new normal life, designing urban spaces will change people behavior or adjust the design with people behavior. So there's a discussion about behavior. So the question is, which one to take into account, the behavior and we adapt it, or the behavior that needs to be readjust in according to the virus? Okay, that's a question from Mbak Kirana from UII. And another question from Tutin Arianti from Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. So it is interesting to learn both presentation, the way signage play critical role in defining spaces in public sphere in a time of crisis. So the question, do you think that it is the time when space and personal space, territory, border is defined more visually? Like perhaps we know it as a psychologically border, or we can feel it psychologically But now, due to the crisis, should it be more visual rather than only as a psychology barriers? So, and then there's last questions from Ahmad from University of Sumatera Utara. So the question for Prof. Nicole, you quote Prof. Jangel in the beginning of your presentation. So what do you think about his life between buildings concept in this future new normal public life after pandemic? So there's the concept of life between buildings where mostly to enhance social interaction. So how it will go to the new normal public life. Okay, so that's the question, and please, if you can answer to these questions. Maybe we can start from Prof. Uhrig.
Okay, all right. The first question, if we should consider more the behavior of people, this leads me to a very famous quote, so that men are shaping the city and later the city is shaping men. There's some kind of interrelationship, and I think one does not work with the other. So both has to be considered. Of course, we have to inform people and we have to establish rules now, so that it's change behavior of people, or let's say trigger or give way to new behaviors. But on the other hand, of course, we have to respond a lot with our design that will change as well the behavior by people finally without giving only a sign. So that means we need to go all ways of communication. And I think either the way with words and with design, and all this is reciprocal and will influence each other in the end. So we need to see this always as a whole construct. And there was another question. Oh yeah, if we need to define personal space a little bit better or more obvious. This is how I understood the question. I think this is a very interesting aspect that we should consider as planners. And this is really part of the game when you start thinking about, maybe I call it corona-proof landscape design. We already do this. So if you consider park designs, for example, where there's the open lawn, where you see everybody and everybody sees you, you feel like on a stage. But as well, we are designing intimate spaces where you have a bench to sit down, and this bench is surrounded by some hedges, and you feel more intimate. So this is a very good hint. This is a personal space, and please feel like. And maybe we can think about of making this a bit more obvious or more clear to people. I think this is a very good hint for us, as we're still in that process of learning. Thanks for that good question. And regarding life skills, life between buildings, if we read the book today, knowing about Corona, I think after turning the next page, we feel like, oh my God, how can we manage this in future? You're totally right. With this background, this book gives me a nightmare. But nevertheless, it is a very successful book. And I think Jan Gehl is just on the right track. As can you imagine, well, just close your eyes and think it opposite. What happens if we don't have the life between buildings? How would you feel in a city without social contact, without only social distancing, without design that triggers you to sit down beside a person or to get into contact? This seems very rude to me, and I think this is not the development that we want. And as human beings, we are social beings, and we need this interaction. If we don't have that, I think our behavior will not change too good. This can't be an option. So that means all we learn from Jan Gehl's life between the building, we really need to put on now the new glasses of the Corona glasses. How can we act like this, or to respond to these needs as designers, but making it safe at the same time? I think this is what we need to combine right now, to really think all these concepts of Jan Gehl over, but with a new layer of being aware and being alert. How can we solve this? And if the scenario comes and we will have a good work in vaccination, it might work and go on. But if not, so then not. So we need to stay flexible.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can wait for the next jungle life between Corona. And maybe then we can see the new glasses to see how the social life will be. So, Pak Ilya.
I'm giving some kind of highlight to Nicole's statement that and that we cannot give up to what we believe in as a good city. Of course, the Yankil work is good for us to bring back space from the vehicle to human. And it is proven that it is better than if the space for the vehicle, for instance, something like that. And we cannot give up that quality with that kind of because of the coronavirus. So what we need is the creativity to add the layer. So that's the key, I think, and I think this is the question and the solutions that we try to seek. And of course, in many societies, they have some kind of solutions, a very local solution, and exchange of the solution maybe will give some kind of idea to other society. I think one of the example is that Vietnam invent first the road being translated or redesigned into marketplace with some kind of great irons and people try to B.R.R being ordered according to that grid, and then now is being used in Bandung and some part in Indonesia because of the idea. And then although because of the maybe notion of behavior and maybe understanding of the people, some workers and some sellers in this new layout of market is not along not according to the grid, but simply in the space where shading is present. So that's the way in Indonesia maybe react to the between the idea and the situation. So we need more discussion in that area of solution, and then try to bring into very local solution. And I think this is the mechanism that we can develop, learning from other, and then try to challenge into the local context, and then maybe we can find a good and proven solution, and then can be disseminated into other society or other region or other places. So I think this is the key that we should be taken into account. And as a we are a designer as the key, one of the key changes responding to the COVID. And then again, we cannot give up the the quality that we believe is that this is good. I don't think that maybe in Germany, which is very much depending on the tram and public transportation, and then suddenly go back to the private cars. Oh no, that will be creating more problem than COVID itself. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Pak Ilya. And still have like around 20 minutes. Will we read 2 more questions, or what do you think? Please advise me.
You're asking us?
Yeah.
Yes, let's have a look at the question. There is another question. I read that it's about the culture in Europe and Indonesia. So maybe this is a good chance to have a look at that. So how did people in Indonesia respond to the situation and move through the public space? I think this is a good question and a good chance to discuss this. So maybe you or Professor Ilya can have a word on that.
Okay, please, maybe Pak Ilya, what do you think about that? Oh, okay, Pak Ilya, can you unmute your microphone? I'm sorry. So because we have different, yeah.
In many journals, there are invitation for writing from many point of view concerning the COVID, and then I think the cross cultural responses on urban design, for instance, or maybe socially social mechanism of the society. It is also very much interesting in that case. So I think if starting this discussion, maybe we can create some kind of community of authors from many parts of the world, maybe, or many parts of the area, and then try to make a reports and how the people react, or how the government try to impose some kind of idea, etc. So I think this is very nice start. I mean, Indonesia and Germany is quite the opposite to some extent. For instance, to the discipline, the people in Germany, it's very, for my experience, it's very good in terms of the obedience to the rule. But Indonesia, to some extent, always find a way to deconstruct that rules. So
creativity.
So that's very interesting, and I'm sure that there will be fruitful for not comparing, but somehow creating the spectrum that maybe this one can be temporary solution, this one can be a permanent solution, or this one is suitable for this kind of society, but that one is not. So I think that's very good. We have two Tami from Medan. I know orang Medan is very different with orang Jawa, for instance.
Okay.
Now, that's very interesting to hear. So from my German background, I can just say, okay, as all the world knows, a big group of Germans, they like to obey. We are well known for being disciplined. Of course, we have other people too. But it was interesting for me to see how people really took this very seriously, the rules. Although personally, I had a lot of talks to people who were not 100% convinced of all these measures, and they did not have any fear at all. But nevertheless, they were sticking to the rules. But I could see also that after 8 weeks, there was starting some change. So people started to get nervous, and they didn't want to obey anymore. Um, and the mindset was changing as well. And some demonstrations started on our big squares and big cities, although it was forbidden to demonstrate, or it was only 20 members allowed with a distance of 1.5 meters. But more people came and were demonstrating and say, hey, we want now relaxation of the measures. We don't want to accept this anymore. And in our press, they were writing a lot about specific political groups. And they said, oh, this is strange people, this is the Nazis, or this is those people, crazy people who think about, they have strange visions. But actually, this was only a small part. And many just normal people, they started demonstrations, or they said, oh, I'm sick of these measures. Let's get back to a normal life. Come on, go faster with relaxations. We don't think it's so serious. Or, well, we see that we can control this with our health system. Let's not suffer too much from economical crisis later, or let's educate our children. So my children, they are off school since 10 weeks, and they're sitting home. And although they said they're opening schools again, since then my daughter was only once in school, and I have to take care for her homework. So this is a lot of sacrifice we have to give, and people now, they really want change. And I think maybe in Indonesia, people started a bit more creatively how to model them through the regulations, but we do this too now. So yesterday I was in public transport, and this is the rule now to have mask, for example. And there were 10-50% of people, they just didn't use masks, so they did not want to obey, and they did not want to follow the rules. So this is happening too right here. So that means I see there's a certain time limit. How long are people willing to really follow all these guidelines? And even we Germans have our limits for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Nice, Pak Barito. Maybe we can start to join effort for the collection of ideas and collection of the responses in many parts of the area. And then maybe this is also one of the invitation to maybe all the participants here who are willing to join that effort. I think this is
Exactly.
I think that's good idea, but maybe Barito.
Yes, of course. I think as now we all facing the common situation, like
Yeah.
this is something that make us unite. We're facing the same thing, so it will be also a good idea if, as Pa Ilya mentioned, that we can share our experience, we can share ideas regarding this, and maybe we can come up with something that's very useful and will be very useful for us. So I think we still have some minutes left. I think I will end this interesting topic. Because we know that this is a topic that never end. It's still a hot topic. We can talk for all night, but I think we still have the some time left, so I have to end the question. I think I like to thank you to both Prof. Uhrig and Pak Ilya. Thank you very much. I think we are talking about very interesting yet very hot topic, and we all know that we are needs to prepare for this situation in many ways. There's things that already described, things that already done, but maybe here and there will be needs of improvement. And in the end, I like to thank for all attending and question. Also, thank you very much for all sharing from both of today's guests and from all participants. We hope that we can learn and get benefit from all. So I think there are no like formula as Pak Ilya said, but I think what I can learn from this discussion is the first thing is the optimistic. Like, of course, we have challenge, but humans are made to face challenge, and yet we can come to have a better conclusion. I think like all time ancient people encourage themselves to go out from the cave, for example, and then we reach more new things, more benefit for us. So we can see from the cultural behavior, technological advancement, social relation. Like we are actually far by physical, but I think we are close. Like we can see how people socially becoming more eager to help the others, know that there is this situation. So there's always a good side for this. And I think the creativity, a lot of examples like new fashion, new trend, maybe new trend in public space design. So I think we have many lessons learned, especially in public space design. And we can see also many people change this threat into opportunity, like new business probably. So in the end, I hope we can still optimist for this. Hopefully we still have a bright future, and as a human being, we can face this challenge and making something good out of this situation. So as Pak Ilya quote, believe with the good things that already proven before. Pak Ilya and Prof. Uhrig actually, and don't give up. So don't give up the good things that you already learned regarding the social interaction, public space, and whatever good things that we already learned. So I hope with our new near future or new normal will be our new wonderful and better normal. So okay, as we are in the end of today's session, so once again I like to thank to Prof. Uhrig and Pak Ilya for all shares, talk, and discussion. So let's close today's event by reciting Hamdalah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. So thank you very much for all attendees, and please stay tuned for more incoming event by the architectural department. So
Thank you.
that's all from me. I think I will clap online. So see you soon. Stay healthy, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this well-organized event, and thanks for all this input. It was a really interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye to everyone.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Ilya.